Okay. So if you don't mind, for those of you who are on right now, if you can just all mute yourselves, and then that way there are no distractions or anything. I'm going to minimize um, my screen, my windows here and everything. Again, I just want to apologize for the late start and I appreciate your patience. Again, my name is Elisa. I am a Kelly's Choice dietitian and we do these webinars once a month for you guys. And the topic for this month is real food first. So, excuse me while I'm still allowing people in from the waiting room. So just kind of starting out, if you haven't attended these webinars before, welcome. And just wanted to remind you all of our mission at Kelly's Choice, which is to empower individuals to invest in themselves and their overall wellness in pursuit of living their best life. So that's really what we're about here. We are very education focused and giving you the tools that you need so that you can make informed choices and feel empowered instead of at the mercy of, media and everything coming at you and not knowing what are the healthiest things because there's so much information and misinformation out there nowadays. All right, so why are we talking about real food? Well, with the industrialization of food, we've gotten kind of away from just eating natural, real food, whole food. And so this is meant to just help to clarify some of the misconceptions and just what are we talking about when we say real food? So, what is it? Real food, again, it's mainly unprocessed, or I should say minimally processed. It's free of a lot of chemical additives. It's going to be very nutrient dense. And essentially, this is the type of food that we started eating, thousands of years ago. But as I mentioned, as we come into more of the industrialized food manufacturing, things like that, convenience food items, ready to eat type food items that have become so popular in starting the 20th century, this has now become the main component of our diet. This is what has dominated our day-to-day, week to week, month to month, year after year diet, which has led us to today's chronic lifestyle related diseases and illnesses. So yes, processed food can be extremely convenient. But my whole approach is how do we make healthy foods also convenient? Because we know the convenient foods as is are not making us any healthier. They're not making us any happier. We might think that it's solving problems in the moment because we're busy and it's easy to grab convenient foods, but in the long run, we are just as stressed out as ever, just as depressed, more so than ever before. And so, how is that contributing to, how does food play a role in that? Nutrition play a role in all of that? So, we want to follow not a fad diet. We are all about real food choices, real people promoting real food, no gimmicks, no, pushing supplements and pills and fad diets and all of that. Let's just learn how to make healthy choices and make them more often than not. And so that's the goal here. Okay, so real food is also going to be super nutrient dense, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. The less processed a food is, the more naturally occurring nutrients are going to be in that food. The vitamins, the minerals, these are our micronutrients that are so critical for optimal health. The antioxidants, all of these micronutrients is what our body uses to maintain proper cell turnover and cell functioning, and just proper, digestion, all the functions of the body. It relies on those micronutrients, which come from whole foods. For example, a cup, as you see here on this slide, a cup of red bell peppers or broccoli or orange slices, that's going to give you more than 100% of what you even need for the day for vitamin C. So if we're eating this well-rounded, balanced diet consisting of more whole foods than processed foods, then you can see that we don't need to be depending on vitamins and supplements to meet our needs for certain vitamins. Eggs and liver, super high in a really important nutrient, choline, which is helpful for proper DNA functioning and is essential for proper brain functioning. One single Brazil nut is going to give you all the selenium, which is a really important nutrient, also for DNA cell turnover and all of that. All the selenium that you need is available in just one Brazil nut. When's the last time you've had a Brazil nut? I know people that pick those out of the nuts when you're eating mixed nuts. So, trying to incorporate some of these nutrient dense foods that maybe we have turned away from in the past and starting to develop a taste for them and incorporating that variety back into the diet. Real food, whole food is actually going to also be lower naturally in sugar because most processed foods have a lot of added sugars in it. So we're not saying sugar in general is bad if it's naturally occurring within that whole food. For example, fruit. But the more processed something is, the more added sugar is going to be in the diet. And that is the dangerous type of sugar. These added sugars have been shown in research to contribute to diabetes, heart disease, obesity, insulin resistance, which is basically just a precursor to type 2 diabetes, also contributes to fatty liver disease. And so again, talking about these chronic lifestyle related diseases that have shown much more prevalence in the recent past since the introduction of processed foods. So I mentioned fruit being containing natural sugars. That's okay. It's also loaded with fiber and water, two nutrients that are essential in our diet and in our day-to-day for proper health and longevity and wellness. So if we're getting our sugar from a natural food source or a whole food or real food, then it's going to be packaged nicely with all these other great nutrients and beneficial compounds versus getting our sugar from something like soda or any kind of a processed food, sweets, bars, things like that are just a bunch of processed ingredients added together plus the added sugars. And so that's going to be a much more dangerous, have much more of a dangerous effect on our health. And fiber. Fiber is my favorite nutrient ever. I talk about it all day, every day. My clients know that if you are going to talk to me, you're going to talk about fiber. I incorporate it in every conversation around every nutrient in the diet. It is truly a superstar nutrient. It provides us so many health benefits. And guess what? It's going to exist in many, many of our real foods or our whole foods. So what does fiber do? Fiber helps with good digestion. It helps us get fuller faster. So it helps with weight, maintaining a healthy weight. Because if you're eating foods high in fiber, you're much less likely to eat a smaller volume, or it's easier to not overeat if you've got enough fiber in your food because it fills us up faster. So it helps with that portion control and maintaining a good healthy weight. It also helps with our metabolic health because it helps to stabilize our blood sugars and thus our insulin response. Insulin is the root cause of a lot of issues, that too much insulin response, I should say. It can be the root cause of a lot of metabolic issues like type 2 diabetes and weight gain, obesity. And so by just incorporating more fiber into the diet, that can really delay the onset or prevent the onset of a lot of these metabolic health issues. Fiber also helps to move bad cholesterol out of the body when we have it in our diet on a regular basis. It helps to move toxins out of the body. So if it's keeping your digestive health intact, keeping you regular, you're moving you're moving your bowels regularly, and with that comes moving out toxins and cholesterol out of the system and out of the body. Where is fiber found? Fiber is found in our plant foods, which we need to eat more of, incorporate more fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Very specific examples that are shown here on this slide, your chia seeds, fruit, carrots, and other types of root vegetables. Berries are one of the highest fiber fruits you can eat. So I really always recommend incorporating berries into the diet, a good variety. Avocado, a lot of people are surprised when I tell them that if you add avocado to your salad, to a wrap, a sandwich, to your dish, you're not only getting healthy fats. A lot of people know that that's a good heart healthy fat, but guess what? It's also a great source of fiber as well. And then of course, we're all familiar with our beans. We all know that that is high in fiber. Beans are high in fiber. Nuts and seeds, legumes, all of these great sources of fiber. So not just about cutting out the sugar and the processed foods, but also incorporating the fiber into the diet as well. So we talked about how they're naturally going to be lower in sugar. And I feel like I already did this slide. Did I just go backwards? Sorry, guys. I did. Okay, I went backwards. So real food, whole food, lower in sugar naturally, and also higher in healthy fats. A lot of our whole foods are going to be higher in healthy fats. Now, one of the most popular diets around right now is a keto diet, right? A ketogenic diet. And that is known to be a high fat diet. And if we look at where our fat is coming from, we can just try to incorporate more healthy, natural, whole foods into the diet that are naturally high in fats. Still want it, in appropriate portion sizes. A keto diet is another conversation. So we want, someone just commented about a keto diet. And so, yeah, that's such a hot topic. And so this can be another conversation for sure. And maybe we should need to do a whole presentation on different diets and things like that. But my whole thing is it needs to be done in a healthy way, because a high fat diet doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be healthy. We always want to look at our sources of fat. Are they coming from saturated fat sources? So think of animal products. Any fat coming from an animal product is going to be a saturated fat. So we don't want an overload of saturated fat in the diet, because that is known to clog the arteries. It's known to raise bad cholesterol. Does that mean to not have any saturated fat? No, but we shouldn't be going overboard with saturated fat from all different sources. High fat dairy, high fat cheese, the higher fat cuts of meat. This is all too much saturated fat. We need to keep the saturated fat at a certain percentage. Really and truly, it should be no more than like 7% of our total daily calories should come from saturated fat. But we do want to incorporate in the unsaturated fat, specifically the monounsaturated fats. Where does that come from? Our nuts, our seeds, our olive oil, our avocado oils, peanuts and peanut oil. These are all great sources of unsaturated fats that are shown in research to actually raise our good cholesterol and lower the bad cholesterol. So variety is key. Okay. So again, I think that the overall amount of fat in the diet still needs to be no more than about 30 to 40% of our total calories, because you don't want to push out the other nutrients. You still need protein, you still need carbs. Those should be moderate, and the fat should be also in the range that it needs to be in. Coconut and coconut oil, that's pictured here on the slide, so I will address that. So coconut oil, there's a lot of controversy around it, right? Because it's technically a saturated fat. However, if you notice, it's not from an animal, which we said those can be dangerous fats if we have too much of them. So the fat from coconut oil, yes, it's saturated, but it comes from a different chain of fatty acids without getting overly complex with it. They are considered medium chain fatty acids or medium chain triglycerides. If you've heard of MCT oil, that's kind of a big thing as well. You probably see bottles of it, which is funny to me because back in the day, you only found that in the hospital setting when somebody couldn't process fats. We would give them MCT oil because it bypasses the need for the liver to have to process and assimilate all of the compounds from that. So that is the type of fat that's found in coconut oil. It's found to be anti-inflammatory. It's found to help to assist in burning fat and oxidizing fat, so it can help aid in weight loss. However, just because there's healthy components to it and it's made up of a different type of fatty acids, doesn't mean that we need to go to town on coconut oil and add, heaping spoonfuls every single time we cook it, every single meal, and cover our food in it and put it in our coffee. Again, we're looking at the overall load of saturated fat in the diet. Where is it coming from? How much am I getting? We still need to kind of make, smart decisions and keeping things in certain within certain guidelines so that we're not overdoing it. Just because something is good for you doesn't mean the more the better of that. So kind of using good judgment and taking all of this into consideration. Okay, I've got some chats here. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So someone asked about grass-fed, grass-finished meats. So again, without getting too far off the beaten path here, I would say that if you're going to eat meat, definitely if it's organic, grass-fed, sustainable, all of that plays such a big difference, obviously, as to the type of nutrients that you're going to be getting, because the nutrients that cow is getting is very different than a commercially, fed, produced mass, like all of that. You're going to get a different set of nutrients, and it's going to be not as healthy for you as if you're getting your meat from a grass-fed, if it's more sustainable. So in fact, you're also going to get more omega-3 fatty acids if you're eating grass-finished meats, because that cow ate plants that were high in, they're getting omega-3, so that means that's going to transfer to you. So that does make a really big difference. So if you're going to do meat, even if it's a higher fat meat, I would definitely say do organic and grass-fed versus not. But still, saturated fat is saturated fat. You do still want to mind the quantity. Even if it's from grass-finished meats, you still want to be careful with the overall load. Again, keeping it within like 7%. So just to kind of give you an idea, let's say you're eating like an 1,800 calorie diet divided by 9. That's like maybe 15 to 20, depending on how many calories you eat a day, 15 to 20 grams of total saturated fat in the diet for the day is good. Everything else should be from unsaturated fats. And yes, if you're going to do saturated fat, get it from grass-fed sources. Other than extra virgin olive oil, which oils do you recommend? So depending on what your use is. And so when I work with clients one-on-one, we have a whole entire session where we talk about dietary fats. And one of those pieces of the conversation is about the smoke point and the sources of fats and things like that. So extra virgin olive oil is great for dressing your salads and using kind of at the end of cooking to flavor. It's got such a great flavor. But it hits its smoke point pretty quickly. So you don't want to use it with really high heat cooking because it actually destroys the healthy components of that olive oil that you're trying to use it for. And it also adds a lot of, it oxidizes quickly. So you don't want to really get your oil to a smoke point. You want to use appropriate oils. So better oils for cooking that are also heart healthy, unsaturated types of oil are going to be your avocado oil and your peanut oil. Those are honestly the two that I use for cooking, mostly avocado oil, just depending on what you're making. So sometimes peanut oil is better. sometimes out the avocado oil. So for actual cooking, sauteing, higher heat, things like that, I would use avocado and peanut oil for getting monounsaturated fat, staying away from like the canola oil, the vegetable oil. Those tend to be very heavily bleached and processed and can oxidize faster as well, and contribute unhealthy compounds. Good questions, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to move on just in the interest of time here. I think I don't have any other questions right now, but thank you for the questions. Let's see. So omega-3 fatty acids, you're going to get also from real food, whole food sources. You can get them from fish and you can also get them from plants. Omega-3 fatty acids are important for our brain health, our heart health. They're super anti-inflammatory. So do you need to pop omega-3 fatty acid pills or fish oil pills every day? Not necessarily. If you need a therapeutic dose, then yes, we can talk about that separately, but you're going to get it just from eating fish twice a week. Or if you're incorporating walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds into your diet on a regular basis, you're going to get omega-3 fatty acids in your diet. So including that in your diet is going to be really important as well. We're all about including the right foods in the diet so you don't have to take a ton of supplements. Let's see, got another question. Hemp seeds, also really good source. Yes, great protein source. Keep in mind with a lot of the seeds, you do need to ground that. If you're just eating the whole seed, it kind of goes right through you and you're not going to be able to extract the natural oils and omegas and things like that from them as well. So you do want to ground them, put them, in a smoothie blender, or make sure they're crushed, things like that. Otherwise, they kind of they move through you. They help because the fiber still helps. So that's going to be a good source of fiber, but you want to make sure that you're being able to extract the oils out of things like your hemp seeds and your flax seeds. But yeah, still good sources of healthy fats as well as protein and fiber. So seeds, yes, incorporate them. If you're able to digest them and you're good with them, incorporate them into your diet on the regular. And so we also talk a lot about variety. So not just cutting down portions and really trying to expand your horizons when it comes to eating food, not getting stuck in a rut of, oh, I eat a salad every day at lunch, so I get vegetables. We want to move beyond that. We want to incorporate more of the darker leafy greens, the cruciferous vegetables that maybe you don't recognize, maybe you would enjoy them if you would try them. So trying to incorporate different types of vegetables and fruits into the diet. There are so many different options of whole foods. We look at where do we get our nutrition from? I always tell my clients protein, carbs, and fats, and what are the healthiest sources of each three of those. So we talk all about protein. What are the healthiest sources? We talk all about carbohydrates. What are the healthiest sources? You want high fiber, whole grains. What are the fruits, incorporating fruits and vegetables. These are all healthy carb choices. And then the fats, like we just talked about. What are the healthiest choices of fats to incorporate more often than not? And then if it's an unhealthy source of protein, carb, or fat, doesn't mean you need to get rid of it forever. We just look at those as a treat every now and then. It's not part of the day-to-day diet. So making sure we get that variety in. And so again, these foods are going to be loaded with the micronutrients, the antioxidants, the cancer-fighting plant chemicals that are natural to plants. That's where you're going to find these things. So instead of eating the processed diet and taking a bunch of supplements, we advocate for just eating the real food where those nutrients are coming from. Because they're also, again, going to be packaged in a nice, neat little bow practically with the way that our body recognizes it. So it knows what to do with the fiber, it knows what to do with the vitamin C and everything that it's getting from, for example, an orange, as opposed to having a vitamin that is loaded with just very isolated forms, synthetic forms of a nutrient. Our body's not going to process that. You're not going to get the antioxidants from a vitamin that you would get from a piece of fruit or a vegetable. Okay. So we talked about how it can help stabilize blood sugars better because real foods are typically going to provide more fiber, and fiber helps to slow down the rise in blood sugar. when we follow a diet that's ultra low in carbohydrates, yes, our blood sugars are going to respond by not spiking as much. And that's kind of the goal for a lot of people, especially if you're worried about diabetes or pre-diabetes. But guess what does the same thing? Fiber in our carbohydrates. And then you're not having to cut out the carbs altogether because you still need the energy from your carbs. You still need the nutrients from carbs. We just want to get rid of the wrong kinds and incorporate the good kinds in. So it stabilizes, controls blood sugar when we eat a high fiber carb. Our triglycerides, if you're dealing with high triglycerides, those omega-3 fatty acids that we find in some of the foods that we were just referencing, we know, looking at research, that omega-3s actually lower triglycerides. And so it's really important, again, to incorporate these foods that are going to do, food is medicine, right? That's what we always come back to. When you're eating a well-rounded, healthy diet, that it can act as medicine without all the nasty side effects. Also good for our gut. When I talk about our, food being recognized by the body and knowing what to do with it, one of the biggest impacts that you can have is on the gut and our gut health, because that impacts so many other things. It impacts our brain health, our serotonin levels. Our gut flora is also responsible for the majority of our immune system and making sure we have a healthy immune system, fighting off infection, virus, disease, all of that. So how do we have a healthy gut? We eat whole natural foods. Foods also that are high in fiber. Again, fiber is my favorite nutrient. Fiber is actually a food source for your gut flora. So we talk about probiotics and prebiotics. The probiotics is the actual healthy bacteria in our gut. But what feeds it? What allows it to be plentiful and thrive in our gut? It's the fiber. Fiber is so critical. Another great important need for fiber. Real food also helps to promote dental health in a way, because if we think of foods that are highly processed, foods that are high in sugar, dissolve in our mouth very quickly. Think of like a piece of white bread that just kind of dissolves nicely on your tongue, or candy, sugar, things like that. Obviously, that's harming our dental health. There is also really good research that shows us that if you're prone to plaque causing bacteria in your mouth, it's very closely correlated to the plaque buildup in our arteries. So heart health and dental health are very closely related. So very important is dental health. Let me see, I've got a question. Okay, so Kenneth is asking wheat bread only. So it doesn't have to be wheat bread. It just has to be, 100% whole grain bread. So any type of grain. So maybe it's an oat bread, if you've seen oat bread, and if you're like, I don't do well with wheat, or maybe I'm gluten-free and I can't have wheat. That's okay. Just make sure that whatever the source is, it's minimally processed, meaning 100% whole wheat bread is not it's using the whole grain versus stripping of its fiber, processing it, and then coming up with a different product. So if you're doing oat bread, it's got to be 100% oat bread. Whatever grain it is has to be 100% whole, as opposed to refined and processed. A lot of if we're talking gluten-free, I don't know if that was the direction that you were going or thinking, but a lot of the gluten-free breads that are not made with wheat can still be very heavily processed and very minimal in fiber. So check the fiber. Check the ingredients. Is it enriched? That's not what you want. If you see that the bread is enriched, or an enriched product, whether it's a cracker, bread, whatever, that means it's been processed and the fiber's been stripped out. You can also look at the fiber content. If it's like 0 to 1 grams of fiber in that bread, I would skip it and find another bread that has more fiber in it, because the fiber comes from the whole grain. Doesn't have to be wheat. Wheat is just one example of a grain. Just has to be a whole grain. So hopefully that answers your question. Real food does cost less in the long run. So there is a lot of controversy and argument about this too, and I hear it all the time from my clients. It's expensive to eat healthy. Unfortunately, yes, it can be. But part of my job is to help make it so that it is much more attainable and realistic for people, that you can still keep within your budget and buy whole real food. So we want to think about, buying frozen and truly a lot of, if you look in the grocery store aisles on the shelves, if you're buying a lot of processed packaged foods, those are very pricey. And so we talk about sticking to the perimeter of the aisles, buying fresh, buying frozen, things like that. As you can see here in the second line on this slide, a 2013 analysis found that eating healthier food costs about $1.50 more per day than unhealthy foods such as processed foods. So yes, it is technically can be more expensive. We can get creative with making it not more expensive. But guess what? In the long run, that $1.50 more per day is definitely pretty minimal when we compare it to the cost of, again, managing those chronic lifestyle related diseases, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, all these things that are related to eating a very highly processed diet. I'd rather spend a little bit more right now and make those choices healthier than in the long run having those medical bills and dealing with what it costs to have diabetes, for instance. And I work with people with diabetes all the time. It's very costly. The supplies, the medication, everything, the insulin, depending on what stage you're in. People with diabetes do spend over double than what people that don't have diabetes spend just on those medical supplies and healthcare. So weighing out those costs, long run versus here and now. And again, getting creative with how we can even save money in the here and now and still make healthy choices. It is better for the environment. So if we think about the conversation of eating local, shopping at your local farmers markets. I know everyone on this call you're in New York and there's no farmers markets right now, but when you're able to shop locally, foods that are local to your region, knowing your farmers, things like that, this is so much better for the environment. If that is a concern of yours, then buying something that was maybe grown and harvested somewhere on the other side of the country that had to be harvested before it was ripe, which means didn't have a chance to take up all the good nutrients from the soil that it would have if it were allowed to ripen in an appropriate time. Then it gets loaded onto a truck, which has to go all the way across the country. So the fuel, the greenhouse gases, all of this stuff, horrible for the environment. And I always say, even just shopping local, sustainable, more important than even buying organic in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to produce. It's expensive to have that USDA organic stamp on your item. So a lot of our local farmers might not be able to afford that, or they choose not to spend money on that, but they're still farming organically. Just get to know them, ask them about their practices. Whether they say it's organic or not, on the label, if you know that they're doing things in a sustainable way and it's local to your region, that's far better than buying something, again, that was grown and harvested in Costa Rica and you're in New York and, it's got the organic label on it though, and it's $3 more, that's not what we're looking to do for sure. It's creating much more waste and cost. And this just talks about what I was just talking about, supporting your local farmers. And so that is pretty much everything in a nutshell here, talking about choosing real food. I hope that you guys learned a little bit or have a little bit more information than you did when you started this. Again, I apologize for the late start. This is our Instagram. If you want to follow us on Instagram, Kelly's Choice _nutrition. We always are doing giveaways. Kelly's always front and center there and sharing a ton of information around health and wellness and nutrition. So I encourage you to jump on that if you're on Instagram and follow us over there. We do these webinars every single month for you guys. I will make sure that I send the slides and any pertinent, helpful resources and handouts and things like that regarding the subjects that we talked about today. You'll get those by email at some point later today or at the very latest on Monday. So again, thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys all have a great weekend. And you'll also get the recording of this presentation as well sent to you. So you can always go back and refer to it, share it with your coworkers and friends and things like that. All right. Hope you guys have a great weekend and we'll see you next time.